tonight.
Where embers flare up, we must engage immediately, and that's what we're doing. This is the science-based approach.
Coronavirus hotspots still popping up across the country. The latest. Plus,
we agree that we want to have an agreement.
Progress on Capitol Hill in the negotiations for the next round of COVID relief. And
calling for genocide on Twitter is okay, but commenting on political situations in certain countries is not okay.
International pushback on social media policies over what companies deem okay to post. All this and more tonight on Fake Nation.
The Russia investigation revived on Capitol Hill. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jenna Bratter.
And I'm John Jessup. Today, a former Obama administration official defended the Michael Flynn investigation at a hearing on Capitol Hill.
But Sally Yates telling senators, knowing what she knows today, she would not have signed off on surveillance into another Trump campaign associate, Carter Page. CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us with the story. Eric?
Well, Jenna and John, that's because the so-called FISA application to surveil Trump aide Carter Page contained incomplete and incorrect information, something Yates says she simply did not know at the time. But most of today's hearing focused on what happened and who was present during a specific White House meeting back on January 5th of 2017.
When the U.S. discovered Russia had interfered in the 2016 presidential election, the Obama White House ejected Russian operatives from the U.S. and slapped sanctions on the country.
As expected, the Russians immediately announced that they would retaliate. But then the next day, they inexplicably reversed course and announced that they didn't intend to take any responsive action.
Yates testified the FBI soon learned why.
General Michael Flynn, the incoming national security advisor, was having back-channel discussions with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Recorded conversations between General Flynn and the ambassador revealed that General Flynn had essentially neutered the U.S. government's message of deterrence.
Yates said that became the focus of a White House conversation, including herself, President Obama, Vice President Biden, FBI Director James Comey, and National Security Advisor Susan Rice. She said the president was trying to determine whether it was appropriate to continue sharing classified information with Flynn, given these revelations.
During the meeting, the president, the vice president, and the National Security Advisor did not in any way attempt to direct or influence any kind of investigation. Something like that would have set off alarms for me.
Senator Lindsey Graham probed further, trying to find out who may have insinuated that Flynn possibly violated the Logan Act. It prohibits negotiation by unauthorized American citizens with foreign governments having a dispute with the United States.
You had one administration leaving in 2 weeks, and you had a new administration coming in urging them, don't escalate. And to anybody who thinks that's a violation of the Logan Act, that is stunning as hell.
The real question isn't whether the Logan Act was violated. The question is whether Flynn was acting on his own, without the president-elect's knowledge or permission.
President Trump tweeting Wednesday, Sally Yates has zero credibility. She was a part of the greatest political crime of the century, and Obama Biden knew everything.
During her testimony, Yates underscored that as we head into the 2020 presidential election, she's hoping that lessons learned from 2016 will prevent foreign interference in this upcoming election. John and Jenna.
All right, Eric, thank you. Meanwhile, still no deal tonight for lawmakers negotiating the next phase of coronavirus relief. Senate leadership emphasizing there are still many issues to be worked out between the two sides.
Speaker Pelosi and I are making progress with the White House, but we remain far apart on a large number of issues. While we have started to generate some forward momentum, we need our partners in the White House to go much further on a number of issues, let alone the Republican Senate.
While Americans are struggling, the Democratic leaders have moved about 1 inch in 8 days. for the sake of the millions and millions who need more help, let's hope they decide to get serious soon.
And joining us now, Rick Klein, ABC News Political Director. Rick, always great to see you.
Hey, great to be with you guys.
So, Rick, concerning these negotiations on Capitol Hill, how will the stalemate play out at the November ballot box?
Well, I think there's a calculation here, and you're starting to see some Republicans shift a bit based on the fact that they don't want to be seen like they are shortchanging people or hurting right now. And I think that's why you've seen the movement, particularly on extended unemployment insurance. You've had more Republicans who took a harder line ideological stance to say this is not right to just be sending this money out the door. We have to be worried about the national debt, who are now saying, actually, we need to be generous because people legitimately need the funding. So I think you're likely to see a split in Republican ranks, with most Democrats joining with maybe half or so of the Republicans in the Senate in passing a package. And I do think a lot of that reflects the political realities. Do you want to face the voters trying to explain why you thought that a couple $100s a week in these extraordinary times wasn't worth the burden to the taxpayer?
Rick, on a different note, today we learned Joe Biden will no longer travel to Milwaukee to accept the Democratic nomination. Meanwhile, President Trump, he's considering giving his nomination speech from the White House. We are living in some pretty unprecedented times.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, the conventions as we know them are gone. I don't expect there's really anything like the physical aspect of a convention. I think there'll be a lot of programming. The TV audience is still going to be relatively large, and I think too large for the candidates to not try to take advantage of. But the bottom line is these are not conventions like we've covered them in the past, and they won't be. And it really is a reflection of COVID. There's no other thing to blame here. Both candidates would love to make the trip. I'm surprised Joe Biden isn't somehow trying to get to the state of Wisconsin, particularly given how symbolically important it was in the last election cycle. And I'm still surprised that Donald Trump pulled the plug on his Florida plans and is not planning now apparently to even leave the grounds of the White House. So it's a campaign like we have never seen before, and I think these conventions that are coming up in a week and a half, 2 weeks are just going to be a heck of a lot different than we're used to.
Any day now, Rick, we're expected to hear who Joe Biden will choose as his running mate. We were supposed to find out potentially this week. Now they're saying potentially next week. Any sense on what's going on there with the Biden campaign?
Yeah, there's no question. It's slid, I think, well into next week at this point. As far as we know, he hasn't met personally with any of the finalists since they become finalists. Of course, he's got a relationship with a bunch of them. But I think he really wants to be deliberate about it. I think the other fact is that the Biden campaign feels like that Donald Trump has done himself political damage without any help from the Biden campaign. And why get in the way of that news cycle? And it would be more in keeping with the usual practice of choosing a running mate to do it right on the eve of the convention. So I'm circling on my calendar kind of the latter part of next week.
Yeah, a lot of anticipation there. Well, on the state level, Republicans in Kansas chose State Representative Roger Marshall to run for the U.S. Senate over Chris Kobach. Rick, talk about what that means for the general election there in Kansas and overall in the balance of power in the Senate in November.
Republicans really nationally were breathing a sigh of relief. Their view is that Chris Kobach, who's a polarizing figure, former Secretary of State, who just lost the governor's race in very red Kansas 2 years ago, would have made it the race much more competitive than Congressman Marshall. So you had Mitch McConnell and his whole team throw in their support behind Marshall. We had President Trump almost just pretty uncharacteristically stay out of it, even though he's been close to Kobach personally, and Kobach was an early and aggressive supporter of his, a kind of bold-faced name of the Trump era. He stayed out, and he was prevailed upon to stay out. And ultimately, Republicans in Washington feel better, a little bit better about their Senate prospects, knowing that they have someone who's a little bit less of a loose cannon, potential to be defined in a negative way than Chris Kobach would have been.
All right, ABC's Rick Klein, we have to leave it there. Good to see you. Thanks, Rick.
Well, Vice President Pence in Florida today, a coronavirus hotspot, addressing voters in what's called a Faith in America tour. He visited a women's health clinic to highlight the administration's support of pro-life initiatives. He also addressed religious freedom while at Starkey Road Baptist Church in Largo.
And I want to make you a promise. This president, this vice president, and this administration will always stand up for the freedom of speech of every American, and we will always stand for life.
CBN chief political analyst David Brody is traveling with Vice President Mike Pence for an exclusive interview aboard Air Force Two. You can see the full story and analysis from David tomorrow on Faith Nation.
Coming up, preparing for a coronavirus vaccine. The latest steps by the federal government.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back. Well, new tonight, more about a $1 billion deal with another pharmaceutical company developing a COVID-19 vaccine and how they're ramping up to immediately deliver 100 million doses if and when it's approved.
Johnson & Johnson is expected to begin late-stage human trials next month. This as the U.S. approaches 5 million infected, outpacing any other country. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the progress on vaccines. Ben?
Well, Jenna, John, the word of progress comes at a real critical time during the pandemic. 3 key areas involving the pandemic are converging. We're, of course, talking about schools reopening, the need for some economic relief, and the rise in death rates.
With coronavirus cases up,
we do see a continuous probably rise in mortality over the next 2 weeks.
Health experts stress social distancing and mask wearing as the best way to control the spread. This as the battle over reopening schools reaches a fever pitch. A picture from inside a Georgia high school that reopened showed crowded hallways and most not wearing masks, which sparked concern cross-country.
I wasn't really happy with the people who weren't wearing masks.
The school superintendent says there is no question that the photo does not look good, but adds they are following COVID-19 protocol. Still, a second grader in the state tested positive, resulting in classmates and the teacher being sent home to quarantine for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, 5 students tested positive for COVID-19 at a Mississippi high school as the governor extended the mask mandate to the classroom.
Today, I will sign an executive order that requires the use of masks by all adults and all children in our schools, unless there is a medical reason not to.
On Fox and Friends this morning, President Trump said children are almost immune from the disease.
The schools should open. This thing's going away. It will go away like things go away, and my view is that schools should be open. If you look at children, children are almost, and I would almost say definitely, but almost immune from this disease.
Dr. Anthony Fauci testified that kids over the age of 10 transmit the virus on the same degree as adults.
I am nervous. And I've never felt this way.
Now, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says he hopes to have the next round of coronavirus relief by the end of the week. Congress has suspended their August recess until they can make a deal. John, Jenna?
All right, thank you, Ben. CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us now for more. Lori, as Ben just reported, the president says kids are mostly immune to the coronavirus. Dr. Fauci, though, says that's not necessarily true. What's the reality here?
Well, it's really sort of splitting hairs. When the president said kids are almost immune, one can think what he meant was kids often don't have complications from it. And Dr. Fauci actually clarified that children we know do become infected with the coronavirus, but them having complications and dying from it is extremely rare. And overall, Dr. Fauci said at a committee hearing earlier this week that he does think schools should safely reopen where possible, because the effects of kids staying home is extremely detrimental to them on a psychological basis, and really even on a learning potential basis. The kids are really suffering, and there's a wide disparity between lower income and underserved children who really aren't doing that at-home learning online the way that their teachers would like compared to some of the other kids.
So many considerations there. Lori, speaking of kids and the coronavirus, the CDC has issued a warning of a neurological condition associated with the pandemic that's affecting kids, acute flaccid myelitis. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, the main headline for that, John, is this is not really related to the coronavirus. The coronavirus does not cause this. It is associated with an enterovirus. The CDC first started tracking this in 2014, and they noticed that it comes around every other year. But here's the major headline. Since 2014, there have been 3 deaths throughout the whole country since 2014. So it is extremely rare. Since the CDC started tracking this in 2014, there have been just a little over 600 cases. Having said that, though, the CDC wants parents to know that it's a very serious issue and your child does need to be treated right away. So if you see your child experience limb weakness, that's the main sign to get them to the doctor right away. And the reason it's associated with the coronavirus is because a lot of times people, parents, adults, everyone are afraid to seek medical care these days because they're afraid of catching the coronavirus at the doctor's office or the hospital. And so this is an across-the-board warning, whether you're having a heart attack, a stroke, if you feel a lump in a certain part of your, that if you need to get dental care, everybody needs to start going back to the doctor and dentist now and not be afraid of catching coronavirus. And that's what really this is all about. But again, we don't want to scare parents. Parents have enough on their plate right now. And so it's an extremely rare thing. But as always, if there's something wrong with you or anyone in your family, seek medical help as soon as possible.
So, Lori, on the vaccine front, there are a number of possibilities in the works here in the U.S. What do you think about this one by Johnson & Johnson?
Well, it's great. A lot of them, there are about 6 vaccines that are going into phase 3 clinical trials. That's the last phase. We already know that there have been some that have already started, like Moderna. And in each one of these, we're talking about 30,000 people. Half of them get the vaccine, half of them get a placebo, and they don't know which one they have. And so then they're monitored to see how they do. We know that this particular Johnson & Johnson, this phase 3 trial is going to begin in September. In earlier studies, smaller studies, we saw that human beings did produce the antibodies needed to fight off the coronavirus. And this Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been actually studied in monkeys who were vaccinated and then given coronavirus vaccine, and they did very well. And so the government has been buying 100 million doses of this and the other vaccines that are going into phase 3 trials, so that if and when any or all of these are approved, they're going to have them ready to go.
I hate to cut you off. We are out of time. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Lori, for your insights.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Lori. Well, the death toll still climbing tonight in Beirut after a massive explosion there. The latest when we come back.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Overseas tonight, investigators in Lebanon are beginning to search the rubble, looking for clues as to what happened and what was behind Tuesday's massive explosion at Beirut's port. Fireworks and ammonium nitrate were being stored on site. The death toll still climbing tonight. At least 100 people have been confirmed dead and 4,000 more injured. Some, including President Trump, believe the explosion was caused by an attack. The Lebanese government says it's still investigating, though, and some are warning not to jump to conclusions.
In my personal opinion, it's not something that someone initiates. It starts like a small fire because of maintenance, welding, a cigarette, doesn't matter. Around fireworks, you have zero tolerance to those mistakes, and we are positive that fireworks was ignited.
Tuesday's explosion hit with a force equivalent to a 3.5 magnitude earthquake. It's the largest explosion ever seen in Beirut.
And Jenna, staying there in the Middle East, Israeli lawmakers are accusing one social media giant of a double standard.
Yeah, they're asking why some political messages are flagged, while Iran's supreme leader freely tweets for Israel's destruction. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell explains.
While the hearing took place in Israel's Knesset, it didn't take long to get the attention of the White House.
It tells you where these social media companies stand, where they're not willing to assess the Ayatollah Khomeini's tweets, but they are willing to assess President Trump's tweets. It's really appalling.
McEnany says the administration plans to take action.
The administration is submitting a petition to the FCC for proposed regulatory changes to hold social media companies accountable for their censorship.
It all began with a simple question from international human rights attorney Arsen Ostrovsky to a Twitter official.
Why have you not flagged the tweets of Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei, who has literally called for the genocide of Israel and the Jewish people?
So we have an approach to world leaders that presently say that direct interactions with fellow public figures, comments on political issues of the day, or foreign policy saber-rattling on military economic issues are generally not in violation of our
Calling for genocide is okay, but commenting on politics is not, just so we understand. I just want to fine-tune the question. Calling for genocide on Twitter is okay, but commenting on political situations in certain countries is not okay?
So if a world leader violates our rules, but it is a clear interest in keeping that up on the service, we may place it behind a notice that provides some more context about the violation and allows people to click through if they wish to see that type of content.
After Twitter's reply, Ostrovsky described to CBN News the reaction from a people all too familiar with genocide.
It was jarring that she can go there and to our faces, to a room full of Israelis and Israeli Jews, try and justify how someone's call for our death, for the genocide of our very state, is somehow acceptable political discourse, or the words that she used, commentary on political issues of the day.
He calls Twitter's policy a blatant double standard.
You know, where they flag the tweets of President Trump, but not on Khamenei. And if they want to flag Trump, that's up to them. Okay, that's their issue. But if you're going to do that, you have to be, equal. You have to apply the same kind of standards to everyone else.
Ostrovsky supports free speech, but says there's no place where Twitter should support Khamenei's calls for genocide.
When you turn your back to this hatred, you become an enabler. When you allow your platform to be used by those directly calling for violence and genocide, you become an enabler. And that's unacceptable.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No Super Balls, man. Come with...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally tonight, innovation in the age of COVID.
That's right, Jenna. The word for a pair of new parents in New Orleans. Henri and Aria Mason-Folse were thrilled to learn they were expecting a little baby girl. But baby Amara arrived 4 months early due to pregnancy complications. And in the age of COVID, the new parents were only allowed to see her while wearing masks, making it difficult to connect. The Innovation Lab at Ochsner Baptist Medical Center developed clear masks so Amara could finally see her parents' faces.
It's been an amazing process watching Amara over the last month get to learn our faces, our smiles, our silly expressions.
And after 4 months, Mom and Dad finally get to check baby Amara out of the hospital and take her home today. Jenna, real quickly, we know you're going to be taking some well-earned time off for your wedding and honeymoon. On behalf of all of us at CBN, we want to wish you and Joe a hearty congratulations.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.